Full bleed printing is where you create a document that's larger than your final product and print ink out beyond the edge of the trim line, and then you trim it down to the size of your final product. So this is an example of how you would set up a file if you wanted to print a no white border around the edge style 8.5 by 11 event poster. The standard for printing is to have an 1/8 inch bleed area or trim area, and then have that indicated by trim tick marks. So if I dragged out a guideline, that's where they would cut. So this is how, if you took it to a commercial printer, they would set your file up. You probably don't need to set it up with tick marks. The printer that I work at has someone whose job is specifically to take the commercial projects and make sure that they fit onto templates like this. So I'm going to show you how to take a template for just a regular 8.5 by 11. In this case it's a trifold, and extend it a little bit so that you have that bleed area that you can fill with a picture, and that way you can just or fill with pixel information, and that way you can just send that file off to your printer. Starting with an 8.5 by 11 template that's already set up, the easiest thing to do is to grab guidelines and put them right along the edges of the existing document. This saves us from having to count out another 1/8 of an inch, which if you've watched a couple of my videos, you know that can go awry. The next thing to do is change the canvas size. So go to Image and Canvas Size, not Image Size, Canvas Size. You can type in an overall measurement, but if you hit Relative, then you can just type in the amount that you want it to extend, and currently it's set to extend from the center. Well, we want an 1/8 of an inch on both sides, so altogether it needs to extend 1/4 of an inch on both sides. When we hit OK, that adds that little bit that is the bleed area. So if I was creating graphics, my graphics that needed to go to the edge of the paper have to fill up that bleed area. They can't stop just inside of it. They have to go all the way to the edge. This allows a little bit of wiggle room when there's trimming, so that they don't accidentally get a little bit of the white on the outside on the edge. It's also another reason why we have safe text zones, is it keeps you very safely out of the trimming area. And that is how you would convert a file to send off to a commercial printer. This is all you would need unless they told you otherwise. Now if you personally want to print a full bleed object off at a local printer, then you probably do need to extend it to a different paper size. So to print a full bleed 8.5 by 11, you need to create it on a tabloid size template, because that's the next paper size up. You print it on a larger piece of paper. So I would start here and add yet another guideline to the edge, and you'll see why in just a second. And again go to Canvas Size, so Image, Canvas Size. Uncheck Relative and type your width in as 17 and the height by 11, which is tabloid size, and click OK. So now this is firmly in the middle of a tabloid size piece of paper. And for trimming purposes, I need to add some tick marks. Now, tick marks need to go along the trim line, and that line is this one right here. So to do that, you can create a 2-point black line any way you want. I'm going to make a new layer, grab my brush tool, right click and set this to be 2 pixels with 100% hardness, and make sure my opacity and flow are up at 100%, and choose black as my color. Now I've got a new layer that I'm going to build these on, and I will just line up my little crosshairs to this outside line and the trim area. So I'm just going to make these and then we'll take a look at them. So to make this clear what is actually going on, I'm going to grab this other object and move it over here and hide my guidelines by hitting Command semicolon. So this is what I just created, is the tick marks that I would line my ruler up with and then cut down with a razor blade to trim my own project. So what I usually will do is create my first set of tick marks and get them all hunky-dory, and then I'm just going to duplicate that layer and move it straight down. So I'm holding shift so it doesn't go anywhere, and then transform, right click and choose flip vertical and hit enter to finalize. Then I would take these and line them up on my trim line. So the trim line is inside the bleed line. Now I've got my top and my bottom tick marks ready to go. They're two different layers. I'm going to merge them into one by choosing both of my layers and right click, choose merge, and then duplicate that new single layer. Grab your move tool and move your ticks over to the left hand side. Transform, Command T, right click and flip horizontal. I think I landed those right, spot on. If you need to nudge things around, zoom in pretty close, grab your move tool, hold down the command key and just use your arrows to get those really nice and centered. When you send a file that's built on a template like this to the printer, so you've got it on a thumb drive or something and you're taking it down to Staples or Kinko's, and you want it to be exactly 11 by 17, when they print it, you need to tell them to not scale it. So if you scale to fit media, this is what it's going to print out as. And if it's not scaled, then it will print out at life size, and as long as they're printing on 11 by 17 paper, you will be just fine. Once you get it printed, the best way to trim it is to take preferably a metal ruler and line it up with the tick marks, and then when you slice it, don't cut clear from the edge of your paper all the way down, because what will happen if you do that is you lose the tick marks on this side of the paper. So only cut just beyond your object with the trim. Do that on all four sides, and then your final printed project will just drop right out of your perfectly trimmed lines, and you will be able to throw away the excess and have a really nice full bleed printed product.